Hi, my name's Camille, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you guys how to capture video that's ready for mixed reality. I'll share some tips for filming VFX shots, discuss what camera specs you should consider, and explain how to snap and stitch HDRI photos. When it comes to filming for mixed reality and VFX, you really only need a few key things. The most crucial is a camera, or even a smartphone that can shoot in 4K. If you have one, a 360 camera is also great, and a computer with Photoshop. Don't worry if you don't have a 360 camera or Photoshop. I'll show you guys how to manage with just a smartphone. Before we dive into more details on how to film, let's go over some key tips and suggestions I've learned while working on these projects. A crucial tip is to film with a high shutter speed, ideally at least 3 times your frame rate. By increasing your shutter speed, you avoid the risk of motion blur in your shots, which is crucial for VFX work. Motion blur in your videos can cause the edges of objects to blend with their surroundings. This blending makes tasks in post-production like motion tracking much more difficult. It also complicates getting a clean key for chroma keying and makes rotoscoping an absolute nightmare. The key to effective filming is to reviewing your shot and ensuring it's as crisp as possible. I often film at 60 frames per second because shooting at 60 FPS captures more data, which is a huge plus for motion tracking. Another key tip for VFX shooting is to always get multiple takes. Having various takes of each shot gives you more flexibility during post-production. Also, filming in high resolution is absolutely crucial. The higher the resolution, the more detail you capture, which is essential for VFX work. I find that 4K strikes a good balance. It provides plenty of detail for what we're trying to achieve without being overly demanding on your equipment or storage. Be mindful of reflective surfaces while filming for VFX. Reflective or shiny surfaces can alter appearances with camera or subject movement, complicating the tracking process. Also, aim to capture scenes with good contrast between different areas or objects. This contrast, again, significantly aids in motion tracking. Last but definitely not least, one of the most important things to watch out for is lighting. When shooting outdoors, sunny days tend to be ideal. Direct light sources allow for more dramatic post-production lighting, which really helps blend 3D assets into your scene more seamlessly. I put together a cheat sheet checklist covering all the do's and don'ts of capturing for mixed reality, which is going to be right there in the link below if you guys want to download it. Now that I've shared my top tips for filming VFX, let's dive right into the practical side of things. First up, grab your phone. We need to make sure we have full control over our filming settings. If your phone lets you manually adjust the aperture, shutter speed, and frame rate, you're all set. If not, don't worry. I recommend downloading apps like Moment or Filmic. These apps give you the control you need so you're not just stuck with auto settings. First off, let's set our phones to film at 60 frames per second with a minimum shutter speed of 1/180. For color profile, I usually stick with the default settings on my phone or go with a Rec 709 format. We will always be filming in at least 4K. You can choose to film in either a 9:16 or 16:9 aspect ratio, depending on the crop you need for your project. Once your camera settings are dialed in, we'll start by pointing the camera downwards. Begin by walking forward slowly, then pan left and right. After that, bring the shot to a symmetrical center on our object. This extra movement at the start isn't just for show. It's actually really useful for motion tracking later on. Next, it's time to film the scene where you plan to add your 3D object. Feel free to experiment with different movements here. And remember, it's always better to have more takes than less. So let's do this a few times to make sure we nail that perfect shot. After we've got our footage, the next step is to capture our HDRI. HDRI is a high dynamic range image that retains lighting data and can be used as your environment. Now you can do this with or without a 360 camera. If you're going the 360 route, you'll need Photoshop and Insta360 Studio. Insta360 Studio is free and super user-friendly, so it's accessible to everyone. I usually shoot with an Insta360 1R and leave it on the invisible stick. We are going to link our phone to the 360, then we're going to switch over to photo mode. It's crucial to enable the camera raw setting for the best quality. Next up is setting the white balance. You want it to match your environment. Just hit the auto mode and then adjust the EV or exposure value setting. The EV controls the camera's aperture and shutter speed, so once that's set, you're good to go. No need to fiddle with any other settings. Next, we're going to capture a series of photos at different EV levels. We'll take one at each of these settings. -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. That's 7 photos in total, each with a different exposure level. The reason we do this is to prepare our HDRI with a variety of exposure options. It's all about getting that perfect lighting range to make our scene as realistic as possible. Alright, once we've finished taking our shots, it's time to hop into our PC and open up Insta360 Studio. With the program open, simply drag all your photos or DNG files into the studio. It's pretty straightforward. Once you've got them all in there, select all the files and then export them to the same folder. This way, everything we need is neatly organized in one place, ready for the next step. Now let's move on to Photoshop. Here's what we do. Click on File, then go to Automate and choose Merge to HDR Pro. Photoshop will guide you through a few prompts after this. One key thing to remember is to ensure you select 32-bit. This step is crucial for getting the best quality for our HDRI. And once you've done all that, voila! You'll end up with an EXR file. This file is your HDRI, and it's ready to be used in any 3D software you're working with. If you don't have a 360 camera or Photoshop, don't worry. There's another way to capture HDRI images right on your phone. There's this handy app called HDRI. It's a lot simpler to use because it automatically stitches and processes your images, giving you a 32-bit HDR image in EXR format instantly. Once you've got HDRI open, just tap on Capture, set it to plus and -4 EV, give your HDRI a name and start capturing. It's pretty straightforward and a great alternative if you're working with limited equipment. The app is pretty intuitive and will guide you through the process. A helpful tip when capturing: stay in one spot and focusing on capturing one axis or level at a time to ensure consistency. Once you've got your capture, it's time to upload and stitch it together online. Just make sure you're registered in the app, then tap to upload and stitch. When it's done, you can usually send yourself the asset download link. And there you have it, your very own HDRI EXR file, all set to be imported into any 3D software you're working with. And that's a wrap for this tutorial. Stay tuned for the next one where I'll dive into the After Effects motion tracker and show you how to import that camera track into Cinema 4D. See you there!